Lesson 3. Writing Markup with JSX. JSX is a syntax extension for JavaScript that lets you write HTML-like markup inside a JavaScript file. Although there are other ways to write components, most React developers prefer the conciseness of JSX, and most codebases use it. 1. JSX, putting markup into JavaScript. Let's begin by understanding what JSX really is. JSX stands for JavaScript XML, and it allows us to write something that looks like HTML directly inside our JavaScript code. In the past, web development followed a clear separation of concerns. HTML was used for structure, CSS for design, and JavaScript for behavior. But as websites became more dynamic, JavaScript started to control not only logic but also what appeared on the page. React embraces this evolution. In React, markup and logic live together inside components. This means that the part of the code deciding what to show and the part that defines how it looks are in one place. It makes development more consistent and easier to maintain. Think of a component as a small function that returns some JSX markup. When React renders it, the browser sees the result as regular HTML. JSX just gives us a cleaner and more readable way to describe that structure. 2. Converting HTML to JSX. Now, imagine you have some HTML written the traditional way, maybe a heading, an image, and a list of items. If you copy that HTML directly into your React component, it won't work immediately. JSX looks similar to HTML, but it follows stricter rules. This is because JSX needs to convert your markup into JavaScript objects that React can use internally. So while the syntax looks like HTML, it's really JavaScript under the hood. To make HTML valid inside React, you'll need to adjust a few things, such as ensuring every element is properly closed, wrapping your structure inside a single parent element, and changing a few attribute names to fit JavaScript conventions. 3. The rules of JSX. 3.1 Return a single root element. The first rule of JSX is that your component must return exactly one root element. If you try to return multiple sibling elements, React will show an error. You can fix this by wrapping everything inside a single parent, usually a less than div greater than. But React also provides something called a fragment, which looks like empty tags, less than greater than and less than, greater than. A fragment allows you to group elements together without actually adding another layer to your HTML. This helps keep your markup clean while satisfying JSX's requirement for a single root. 3.2 Close all tags. The second rule is about closing your tags properly. In plain HTML, you can sometimes leave a tag open, and the browser will still figure it out. JSX doesn't allow that. Every element must be explicitly closed. If it doesn't have content inside, like an image or a line break, you use a self-closing format. And if it's something like a list item, you must open and close it. This rule eliminates ambiguity and makes your markup more predictable. 3.3 Camel case most of the things. The third rule concerns attribute names. JSX is JavaScript, so it follows JavaScript naming conventions. That means instead of using lowercase attributes or ones with dashes, we use camel case. For instance, in HTML you'd write class equals photo, but in JSX you must write class name equals photo, because class is a reserved word in JavaScript. Similarly, attributes like stroke width become stroke width. There are a couple of exceptions. ARIA asterisk and data asterisk attributes keep their dashes because they're part of web accessibility and data standards. Following these naming rules ensures your JSX translates correctly into valid JavaScript and DOM properties. 4. Pro tip: use a JSX converter. If you already have a lot of existing HTML, maybe from a website or template, you can use a JSX converter to save time. These tools automatically adjust things like closing tags and attribute names so that your HTML becomes valid JSX. Even though converters are very helpful, it's still important to understand what they're doing. Knowing the underlying rules allows you to read and fix JSX by hand when something goes wrong. And believe me, at some point, something always does. 5. Final example. When you put everything together, wrapping the content in a single route, closing all the tags, and adjusting attribute names, your React component becomes clean, valid JSX. At this stage, your component can render a heading, an image, and a list of items without errors. You'll notice that React doesn't complain anymore, and what appears in the browser looks exactly as it did in your original HTML. This process shows the power and simplicity of JSX. It lets you write declarative, structured markup inside the same file as your logic, keeping everything tightly connected. 6. Recap. Let's summarize what we've learned today. React components combine markup and logic because they naturally depend on each other. JSX is a syntax extension that makes writing that markup simple and expressive. While it resembles HTML, JSX follows a few important rules. Return a single root element. Close all your tags. Use camel case for most attributes. React's error messages are clear and helpful. They'll often tell you exactly what went wrong and how to fix it. By mastering JSX, you're learning to think in React. You're no longer separating your logic and structure artificially. Instead, you're treating them as a single, coherent unit, just like the user experience itself. That's the essence of JSX and one of the reasons React feels so natural once you get used to it.